Hey folks, thanks for tuning in. My name's Tim, the BTWN guy, and you're watching BTWN News here on YouTube. Hey, like, share, subscribe, do all that. Mike Winger and Ruslan's shocking comments concerning John MacArthur and Bethel Church. Shocking to me. If you're asking, hey, who are these people? I'm going to explain that to you. What makes their comments shocking to me? I'll explain that. We'll look at what they said about John MacArthur and what they said about Bethel. Then we'll hear from each of these men their experiences of being slain in the spirit. Yes, both of them being slain in the spirit. And then we will talk about Mike Winger's view on the position of church prophet, which he holds to. Amazingly, we're going to learn that he supports the prophet at Bethel Church. Shocking. I'm shocked. I thought Mike was pretty solid. I thought that he was just not a Calvinist, and I do not think that he's solid anymore after what I watched and learned today and researched and what I'm presenting to you today. Mike was on this YouTube channel before he was on any other channel. It was the first it was called Google Hangouts back then. We're talking a long time ago, like 9 or 10 years ago. He was on this YouTube channel and met him. I loved him, and I really appreciated what he had to say. We had a group conversation with some other men. And other than that, I haven't paid attention much, except to find out that his ministry has grown tremendously. He used to be a youth pastor. His YouTube channel grew. The interest for it grew so large that he's just does YouTube videos and teachings. So let's look at some of his other stuff. So who is he? Here's his Think Biblically is the theme of his website and YouTube channel. He has over 500,000 followers. That's why I find that it's important to address what I'm addressing today. Here's his website, and here he is. This was in 2018. He made a video, Bill Johnson's Theology and Movement Examined Biblically, and it has over 1 million views. And when I saw that, I thought, good for him. Good for him. He did a good, thorough job. I didn't watch it though. And I've watched portions of it today, and I'm very, very disappointed. Very, very disappointed. Who's Ruslan? He's, I guess he was a rapper, Christian rapper, still is. I don't know if he was before he was saved. I don't know his testimony, but he has a YouTube channel, 223,000 subscribers. That's a lot. Gets lots of views. He talks about culture. He talks about music, talks about Christianity, and he's a charismatic. And I haven't had any good run-ins with him. He and I have made videos addressing each other to one extent or another. But Mike Winger and Ruslan trashed John MacArthur while defending Bethel's false gospel. That sounds like, no, that's crazy. Mike Winger defend Bethel's gospel and trash John MacArthur? That can't be right. So here it is. This is on a different YouTube channel. Doctrinal Watchdog found this and posted it on their website. It's 6 minutes long. We'll play it, and I will stop it to give comment on it. Mike Winger and Ruslan speak of their charismatic Pentecostal experiences and defend Bill Johnson.
You would never call them heretics or wolf in sheep's clothing, right? And I think that's we don't see that enough in terms of engaging with folks that are a bit more charismatic, that it's always they're heretics, they're false teachers, they're wolves in sheep's clothing, that the tongues are pagan. Like I remember reading John MacArthur's study Bible commentary, and he reading through 1 Corinthians, and he's like, yeah, this was a pagan thing, it's demonic. And I'm just like how is this so wild? But in your video regarding
see Mike's response to that, agreeing fully with Ruslan. John MacArthur's very off base on his take of Bethel Church, and Ruslan was giving a review of how much he appreciated Mike's review. The one that I showed you has over 1 million views.
Bethel, you were extremely gracious in not questioning their salvation and not questioning and not calling them heretics and false teachers, which is always thrown around loosely about everybody. This person's a heretic. It's always about a secondary issue. This person's a heretic. This person's a false teacher. This person's a wolf in sheep's clothing.
I get called that all the time.
That's hilarious that you would get called that. So in terms of secondary issues, the charismatic side, you believe in the gifts of the Spirit, right? I believe in the gifts. I call myself charismatic.
They name the name of Christ. They've got the essentials of the faith. For the most part, they do. Even
Yes.
Bethel, I didn't see a false gospel in Bethel's teaching.
I refuse to create a theology that allows for sickness.
Okay, so the person who put this video together, they now have clipped in Chris Roseborough exposing the false gospel of Bethel Church.
So here's this realm of the miraculous that is waiting for the stewardship of the knowledge of God put into decrees that are proclaimed over each other.
So let me back this up a little bit here, because he's preaching a false gospel by saying these words.
And interpreted by many as disease, allowed or brought on by God. That's a different gospel.
No, it's not. Paul told Timothy to take wine for his frequent ailments.
Jesus didn't model it.
Jesus did not heal everybody who came to him. Mark 1 is very clear on
He
that.
didn't teach it. And Paul said, you can't change the standard.
The standard is not that Christians always get healed. That's not biblical, nor is it in line with even reality.
They name the name of Christ. They've got the essentials of the faith. For the most part, they do. Even
Yes.
Bethel, I didn't see a false gospel in Bethel's teaching, not that I'm
Yes.
aware of. I listened to prepare for that message. I listened to 60 hours of Bill Johnson's teachings.
60 hours of Bill Johnson's teachings.
Okay, I did not hear a false gospel.
Okay. I spent less than 5 minutes to find it, and I can even show it more accurate, more clearly than Chris Roseborough did. You heard Bill Johnson preaching it, but here it is on Bethel's website. Bethel's website, Statement of Faith. We believe in the victorious redemptive work of Christ on the cross, provides freedom from the power of the enemy, sin, lies, sickness, and torment. What is the redemptive work of Christ? The redemptive work of Christ is what Christ accomplished on the cross, which is essential to the gospel. So we're talking gospel. And their gospel includes freedom from sin, lies, and sickness. They believe that when Jesus died on the cross, he not only saved our souls, but saved us from sickness today. This is a false gospel. Chris Roseborough demonstrated it, and I'm demonstrating it right from their own website. How Mike Winger can't see that baffles me. It's shocking.
When he rarely spoke of the gospel, and it was rare, it was sad how rare it was. But when he spoke of it, he spoke of the true gospel.
Yeah, perhaps Michael believes that. Perhaps Michael believes that Christ's redemption on the cross gave us power over sickness.
I refuse to create a theology that allows for sickness.
Now, this gentleman here believes that, yet he's wearing glasses. And unfortunately, his wife passed away earlier this year from cancer. How that happens when Christ, you can only conclude, if what he says is true, you can only conclude that Christ's redemption, wasn't, I don't know how you can hold to it. You can't.
The mom and Angela, who I've known for years, decades, was like, hey, have you ever spoken in tongues? And I was like, no. And she was like, well, like, come on, and I was like, what are you talking about? And so she's like, stand up. And we were in the middle of a Bible study. So I stood up and she started praying for me. And then Andrew, her son, walks up behind me with a pillow. And I'm like, stop it. Like, stop. You know what I mean? That's what I'm thinking. And Mike, she full on prayed for me. And it was the weirdest thing ever, and laid hands on me, and my body went stiff. and I full on passed out. And she put her hand on my face and she said, "Speak, child." And I prayed in tongues. And the same exact time, it was as real as ever. My buddy it didn't happen for him. He was like, he didn't even fall over.
All right. Wait for Mike's response. He just heard Ruslan give firsthand testimony of being slain in the spirit.
I full on fell over. It was super. And after that moment, something clicked, something shifted in my consciousness of sin, hearing from God in a different way, not like an audible voice of God. Some of you guys are going to be like, you hear an audible voice. No, it wasn't like an audible voice, but there was something.
Why poo-poo audible voices? Why? If those gifts from the New Testament, early church existed, why isn't God speaking? Why poo-poo God speaking audibly? I don't get it.
Something different after that moment. And I've prayed in tongues after. It's not something I regularly do, but so that's why in my situation, and I don't know how many baptisms there are. You're saying there's two, but I don't know what happened, but something happened and I spoke in tongues and all of a sudden I just it was bizarre. It was the weirdest thing that ever happened to me, but it was definitely real. And it was definitely something that was a pivotal change. But like, my wife has never spoken in tongues. I don't think she's a JV Christian because she's never spoken in tongues. Some of my best friends who are an incredible JV Christian. That's how they frame it, is like, if you don't speak in tongues, you're kind of a JV Christian, right? Like, you don't have the full gospel or the full. Let
me just say this: I believe your story. I don't have a theological reason why I can't believe your story.
I don't know. That shocked me.
I'm slightly disposed to think that, like, shaking and losing control and pulse, like weird spazzy type behavior, that doesn't seem like the kind of thing that would be consistent with the work of the Spirit. The whole slain in the Spirit thing, like passing out, that kind of
what he just explained
thing, I admittedly go, that seems a little strange to me, but it doesn't mean that it therefore is something God can't do. Okay. So I hear your story and I go,
when we used to have theological discussions on this YouTube channel with progressive Christians, pretend Christians, people who, thought that Jesus was just a good example, and they use Scripture to defend their crazy Christian beliefs. They would just quote the verse that says, "With Christ all things are possible."
Go. I don't have a good enough reason to just discount everything you've said. I'm going to trust that. I've spoken in tongues, not with interpretation, but in a way that was very powerful in my life and very needful in the moment, with real spiritual blessing and benefit that happened right then at the time.
Yeah, I don't know how that happens either, Mike, because I think there's supposed to be interpretations. So to recap, Mike Winger is a charismatic who speaks in tongues, says he believes people's testimonies about being slain in the Spirit. He and Ruslan are happy to trash John MacArthur in the same video while defending Bethel Church. That surprised me. I've got more, but I hope that you will comment below on what we've covered so far. Here's Mike in the same video talking about when he was quote unquote slain in the Spirit.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you a story.
Okay.
True story.
I love stories.
When I was a kid, I don't tell too many stories from me being a kid to protect some of the people involved. But when I was a kid, I had a friend who their family took me to a very charismatic church, a Vineyard, and I loved it. I loved it. I was like maybe 13 or 14 at the time, and just barely a new Christian, didn't know anything, didn't read the Bible, didn't go to church on Sundays except when my buddy and his family took me to their church. And they were charismatic at the time. At the time, this particular church was charismatic with no seatbelt. So they were trying to get the entire youth group, which is where I was attending, right? Get the whole youth group to speak in tongues at the same time. They were trying to get you to twitch and shake.
Oh, God.
They were trying to get you to pass out and fall over.
Yeah.
And here's the truth.
What, like what they just happened to him. Try to get you to pass out and fall over. That's exactly what he just said.
I wanted God. I was sincere. and totally ignorant of just about everything, right?
Mhm.
But I went to God, and I remember just thinking like, God, I want that. I want to speak in tongues. I want to fall over. Now, somebody would look at that crowd and they would think, Mike's a false believer because he's part of this crowd with these weird practices going on. When I went up and got prayed for so that that I might pass out, they would have thought, that's demonic. That's actually demonic. And they wouldn't know that inside of me was a genuine heart that really wanted to know God, totally ignorant, totally not paying attention to the Bible, never reading it at the time. I was just like barely Christian, you might say, and or typical teen, one or the other. And I remember going up, and no, I did not speak in tongues at that time. I got up and I stood there being prayed over, and I stood there for so long waiting to like pass out.
What he's explained so far is why he should warn people about Bethel Church. There's no seatbelt on their charismatic stuff. They have tarot cards. They do grave sucking or have done grave sucking. They all manner of wackiness. They do. There's no seatbelt at Bethel, which is why you should have spoken up boldly against Bethel, so that what happened to you at this crazy charismatic church doesn't happen to somebody else.
And it took tons of courage just to get up there in the first place, right? And then the guy next to me who was like, there's a guy guarding you. He's there to catch you, right? Maybe they'll touch your shoulder so that you'll know that they're there. And he just started sighing. He's like,
It didn't
he's
work.
like, this is taking way too long. And I became very self-aware and embarrassed. And so I just checked to see if he was there. And then I just like,
Oh, you faked it. You faked it.
Yeah. I don't know why that's funny. It's tragic. I wanted to also show you this video here. Mike believes, as I was preparing for this, I didn't watch the whole hour and 20 minutes of this video. Or is that an hour and 2 hours? But here's what Mike believes about the position of prophet.
So let's talk now. My last major subject is prophecy. What happens at Bethel more than healing is prophecy. There's tons of prophecy that goes on at Bethel. And what I mean here is not just that Chris Vallotton, the prophet, speaks prophetically. I mean, everybody is speaking prophetically.
You hear that? Chris, what's his name, is the prophet. Mike believes that people have the position of prophet today.
Now, theologically, I fully support prophecy. In fact, I have videos that talk about a biblical view on the gift of prophecy. And you, Christian, you should be praying for prophecy.
Yeah. And okay, but what is it? What does it mean to have the gift of prophecy?
Should be asking the Lord and seeking for God to give you words of wisdom or knowledge to speak into someone else's life.
Words of wisdom or knowledge to speak into somebody's life. Why isn't the scriptures enough? Why aren't the scriptures enough? Obviously, Mike doesn't believe in Sola Scriptura, does he? But wait a minute. He does believe in Sola Scriptura. A 1 hour video on Sola Scriptura. How can Mike Winger believe and defend Sola Scriptura, but yet say you need to try to exercise the gift of prophecy, and he affirms the prophecy, the prophet of Bethel Church, as a legitimate dude with a legitimate gift? How is this true? Am I the only one who was blind about Mike Winger? Am I the only one who? Will be interested in your comments. The only way I try to understand how somebody could be Sola Scriptura and for the office of prophecy today. And here's how maybe Mike justifies it. We look to the Bible as the final authority. What the Bible teaches is true, and it's the final authority. And what the scriptures teach is that the gift of prophecy has continued today, and God reveals to people what he wants them to say in the name of God to encourage other people, and words of knowledge. Those are things, if Mike's using that term right, as he probably knows charismatics better than I do, when he said words of wisdom and And knowledge is something you don't know. Like you are able to walk up to somebody and say, hey, I know this happened to you in your life. God has revealed to me that this happened in your, and this is what it means, and this is what God has to say. You know what this leads to? It leads to this kind of foolishness right here. This is when we understand the text. This is Gabe Hughes's website and YouTube channel. This happened at Bethel Church. Oop, let's start over. See, this is the second time. This is the second time I'm doing this video. And the first time was too long. And now here I am making this longer than the first one. Here we go.
What you're hearing is a worship song at Bethel Church in Redding, California, commanding a little girl who died 6 days earlier to rise up out of the morgue and come back to life. The story of 2-year-old Olive captured worldwide attention as her family asked others to pray for her resurrection. But none of the stories of resurrection in the Bible include a week-long appeal. Take Lazarus, who had been dead for 4 days, but Jesus simply stood at his tomb and said, "Lazarus, come out," and immediately he came back to life. Bethel Church preaches a different Jesus than the Jesus of the Bible. They do not believe Jesus is God incarnate, that he is very God and very man. Rather, they believe Jesus stopped being God and he was only a man. What Jesus modeled, we're capable of doing, including raising the dead. Responding to the controversy, Pastor Bill Johnson said,
The reason Jesus raised the dead is because not everyone dies in God's timing.
Jesus raised the dead to show he is God who raises the dead. No one dies outside of God's timing. Job 14:5 says a man's days are determined and God has appointed his limits he cannot pass. Acts 17:26 says God has determined the time and boundaries of our lives. Remember, Bethel is a church that dumps gold glitter on worshipers and says it's a manifestation of the Holy Spirit. They're con artists, not Christians. Cherish the scriptures so that in a time of grief, you won't be taken by the words of charlatans. Instead, you'll be comforted by the promises of God when we understand the text.
All right, I'll do my best to include all the links of the videos that I've shown, and I will include this video here, which is 1 hour and 17 minutes long, which is the video. If you think I've taken anything out of context, you can watch the whole thing of what these two men said and what I have commented on. Mike Winger and Ruslan's shocking comments concerning John MacArthur and Bethel Church. What do you think? I'll be looking at your comments. Like, share, and till next video, my prayer is that God would bless each and every one of you. Take care. See you.